Hello there and welcome to CannonBallDiva Chronicles. I'm CannonBallDiva and I'll be shedding more light on narcissistic personality disorder and those who may suffer from that personality disorder that's become rampant in our communities today. You see this in the limelight, you see it in our local communities and families. You also see this at work. You might see it in your own personal relationships with your children, your spouses, your friends. You could see it even in general places where you might go to buy food, the grocery. People nowadays, many people believe that the best way of associating with their fellow man or fellow woman is by exhibiting this trait that has become quite disturbing, in my opinion. The trait that they are better than everybody else. The trait that they've been given a right to treat others in a way that they themselves would never accept. If you watch TV or you watch movies and you become aware of the personal life of some of these movie stars or some of these even our local movie stars in Nollywood. You know, I watched recently something. It was a discussion that was being made between Chude and Pete Edochie, with the recent limelight that has been shed upon his son and his recent relationship with the new wife. I believe that Pete Edochie had a stance that I completely disagreed with. The stance that it is, the woman, it is the woman's position to make a marriage work, that it all falls upon the shoulder of the wife. He made a statement about Chioma Chukwuka and said he was surprised to hear that she had left her marriage. Be that as it may, I am not an expert. I'm not a marriage counselor. I do not know what happened if she did leave her husband. But being that we are from a culture where where the male chauvinistic behavior can be very rampant, and I have been, someone that has experienced it firsthand, where they believe they can do no wrong, where you as a woman are subjected to way less than they would expect of themselves. You feel like you have a say at some point. You have to have a say, otherwise you completely diminish, you completely disappear and become something else that God didn't call you to be. God has called us to speak for ourselves as women. Just because we're women or just because you're a man does not mean that you do not have the right to speak up when your spouse or someone that's considered to be your partner treats you in a way that is unacceptable. When I saw the comment that was made by Pete Edochie, I wrote down a comment that said, it is not all in the woman's hands to make a relationship work. The man has a big role to play as well. He has a major role to play, as a matter of fact, as being the head of the family. God has made the man the head of the family. And as such, the Bible says, men, love your wives. That's the first commandment in a relationship that God made between man and wife. The man first has to show love to the wife. And then the woman in turn has to turn around and respect that man as being her head, while she's the shoulder or the neck that turns that head around. I believe that it's possible to make a marriage work. It's possible to make a relationship work, but there has to be the desire to make it work from both sides. In my own personal experiences, I've found that I've had to work 3 times as hard as my partner, many times. I've had to do more just to prove my worth. I've had to do more just to prove that I was a worthy partner to that person. Narcissistic personality disorder sheds light on the fact that the ego can take over the relationship at any point. And when the ego takes control of a relationship, right goes out the window. Whatever is right becomes secondary. The relationship within a man and woman should be based and founded on love, affection, trust, faith, peace, all those fruits of the Spirit that God Himself has written for us to follow, and not the works of the flesh, which is adultery, fornication, envies and jealousies, bad mouthing, gossip, contentions and distensions, so many other things that you see that are rampant in our society today, and very much so in relationships. It is very sad and it is very heartbreaking for me to bring this to you today and to be the one to shed more light on, I would say it's almost like an epidemic now in our society where women are just dropping dead. I keep hearing of women who have lost their lives while trying to make their marriage work. In my own society, it can almost be something that many of you may have even heard, that Osinachi, when Osinachi lost her life. Tell me, I don't know her personally, but who could look more noble and more loyal and more peace-loving and more contrite and more hardworking than that woman? She went out of her way to make her marriage work based on what her family members have said in social media. She sang like an angel. Her song would pierce my spirit when I would hear her sing, because she was speaking. Now I know, then I didn't know, that she was singing from somewhere so deep within herself, where she felt pain, anguish, betrayal, being attacked by your own loved one on a daily basis. It's the worst hell on earth that you can imagine. Being called out of your name all the time. Being literally spat upon like a dog. Being treated like someone who they would never even dare to do that to their enemy. But they do that to you. Someone who's supposed to be their confidant, their friend, their lover. They treat you worse than even they would treat their enemies. That is the trait of a narcissist. They prefer the opinions of outsiders to your own opinion. You, who has stood by them in rough times. You, who has worked hand in hand with them when they had nothing. You, who worked with them from when they were at the bottom. Remember that song by Drake? Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now the whole team's here. That is the song I think that the narcissist marches to. They start from the bottom with you, but when they get to the top, they take the whole team with them and they forget about you. They forget about the hard work you put into that relationship. They betray you and they stab you in the back. There's nothing like loyalty to that narcissist. At that point, all they care about, in fact, as a matter of fact, all they've cared about throughout the relationship was being the one on top, being the one that people would look at and admire. They do not really care about the sacrifices you've put in. When I hear things like how women, and hear stories of how women have struggled with their partners, how they've worked so hard with their partners, and at the end of it all, their partners turned around and abandoned them. Some of these partners actually do things on purpose to those partners. They do things. They attack you verbally, physically, financially, emotionally, so that you end up being the one to say you've had enough and leave. This is called reverse psychology, or it's a way of reversing the I guess the blame. At that point, nobody can turn to them and say they chased you away or they ended the relationship, because they forced you out of the relationship. And because nobody wants to be treated like a dog, when you walk away, they compound the abuse even after you've walked away by accusing you of abandoning them when they know very well that they chased you away with their behavior. There's a story that I remember very well of someone who, as usual, I'll leave names out to protect the identities of people that I may mention in this video. His wife, I believe her name was Bimbo. I will mention her name, but I'll leave her last name out. But I say her name so you can remember, those of you that know the story, of how this woman was set ablaze, either intentionally or unintentionally, to prove a point to a philandering husband, to a husband who was callous in his behavior towards her, who treated her so badly. And at some point, she felt at that point that she had no other choice but to prove that she was ready to die. She She was ready to die for that relationship because she wanted the property, or wanted them to have sole custody, or the sole, both of them to have the shared custody of what they had worked so hard for, which was, I believe at that point, was the house in which they lived in. And she had the papers. She wanted the papers to the house, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and he didn't want to make that available to her. She had worked from the scratch with this man and had 5 children with him. When I heard about this story and I watched the videos of her family members speak about how devastating it was for them to see their loved one die in such a way after all the sacrifices she'd made. The man stood by and watched her burn to ashes. He did not make any attempt to save her. He did not make any attempt to de-escalate the situation, or to, you know, at least pacify her at that time, to make her feel like she was going too far, or that she was being too extremist in her behavior. Just save the situation as a man and not let it get to that point. Some women just want validation. At that point, maybe all she wanted was validation that she was worth the man's time, or that she was worth the man making that effort to save her. I do not condone people going to extreme like that, or trying to kill themselves for a man, or trying to kill themselves to prove a point. But at that point, I believe that she felt like that was all the choice she had, that she had no choice. She was pushed to the wall. The man had all of the resources. They had worked so hard. He had it, I guess he had all the paperwork to it, and he wasn't willing to share that with her after all her sacrifices. And she said she was not going to leave without something to take care of herself and her 5 children. Can you just imagine the trauma that these children went through, seeing their mother die like that? Can you just imagine the pain and the anguish of these children? It's so traumatic to think about what women go through just to prove their worth after working so hard with someone, after giving their life and their blood and their sweat and their time and their resources, to end up with a person that feels like they're worse than just, it's still someone that walks on the street, someone they do not even know. Tell me, my brothers and sisters, what can we do to bring this kind of behavior to an end? Are we going to sit back and just watch women, men, children go through the abuse? You know why it's so hard to pinpoint a narcissistic abuse? It's an abuse. It's a major abuse that's worse than any other type of abuse, because it's psychological, it's physical, it's financial, it's emotional, it's spiritual, and the list goes on and on. But the thing that makes it so hard to actually grasp and have a hold on, just like you probably will hold on to someone that physically abuses somebody and gives them a black eye. You know that the person, the perpetrator, did that. He attacked somebody and they ended up with a black eye. That person can go to jail for that. That's abuse. That is an attack on somebody physically. But narcissistic abuse is so hard to grasp. It's so hard to observe, to say, yes, this person is being abused. But it's worse than even physical abuse. Why, you ask me? Because it is emotional. The pain of emotional abuse is a lifelong dilemma that might need years and years of therapy. You can't see it physically, but people take their lives. People kill themselves. People end it every single day because they feel they have been made to feel worthless and that they do not have anything to live for by someone in their life who they care about enough to care about their opinion. Many times I've watched social media, I've watched Instagram or gone on YouTube, and I've seen kids, even kids can be narcissists. There was this episode of a girl, Caucasian girl, a teenager, who told a boy to go ahead and take his life. He loved her. I think he was infatuated with her. She kept egging him up to, to go ahead. Do it tonight. There's nothing to live for. we can be sure of one thing: they're narcissists throughout all phases of life. It's not just in a relationship between a man and a woman, or at your workplace, at your school, in your communities. Narcissistic personality disorder or narcissism goes way beyond the realms of our imagination. The kind of damage it's doing to people on a daily basis who choose to be silent about their suffering, who look at it as their cross to bear, who look at it as, this is what I have been put on this earth to do. I will suffer it and I will carry it on and I will keep silent about it. My dear brothers and sisters, it is a silent killer. Narcissistic personality disorder, when it is focused on a victim, when a victim is unaware that this is a disorder and they keep being abused by their partner, their friend, their lover, their boss, it can kill. It can kill. It can cause the end of someone's life. And it just doesn't kill by suicide alone. I hear of a recent happening in our society, in my community, my local community, my Nigerian community, where a lady lost her life. In her sleep, she died. She died in her sleep. This is someone that was a loving, caring, happy-go-lucky, giving. She brought all her family members to this country, one after the other. They all have established lives, happy lives. She died in her sleep. Why? Nobody knows the real reason why, but one thing's for sure. It's become a common knowledge that her spouse was very abusive. Not only was he abusive physically, he was abusive emotionally. He took advantage of her. He was involved in many extramarital relationships. She had caught him red-handed a few times, but she stayed on just to save her marriage, because she did not want, apparently based on what we hear, she did not want them to look at her spouse, who was in a ministry, in a Christian ministry, as a bad person. She stayed on to save their image. She stayed on to save that appearance of a loving and peaceful marriage. What is the price? What is the price, my dear friends, that we have to pay just to keep up that appearance of being happy? I know that the God we serve hates divorce, and I'm not sanctioning divorce or promoting divorce here, my dears. All I ask is that we look inward and reflect upon what is happening to our brothers and sisters out there, even though we might have a perfect marriage or might have a perfect relationship. It becomes more disturbing when you yourself know that these behaviors that have been exhibited by many people, you yourself have maybe experienced some part of it in the past. I'm not a novice to some of these attributes of narcissism. I've been physically, verbally, emotionally, spiritually attacked. I've been called out of my name by the person who turns around and smiles the next minute and looks as humble and as meek as a lamb to everyone that sees him, and they think he couldn't hurt a fly. Meanwhile, in the house, he's a tiger. You learn to pick your battles with people like that, because as the experts say, I'm not an expert. Again, I repeat that. I'm not an expert. All I can bring to this discussion is my own experience and the experience of others. And also, what I've read in books, even as I was in school, going through my nurse practitioner courses and nursing courses, we studied psychology. We've studied a little bit here and there about antisocial behavior, narcissistic personality disorder, psychotic behavior, and all kind of traits that lead to maladaptive behaviors in society by people like that, who believe that the law shouldn't apply to them. Are we going to continue to cry silent tears and watch our women drop dead? Watch our friends end their lives? This is a call to you guys out there, those of you who see it as being a worthy cause to speak about. Because this silent killer, this narcissistic personality disorder, or this NYD, which is, I think that's the big name for it. People might exhibit little traits here and there of narcissism. That does not make them a narcissist. Someone who exhibits minor traits here and there, we all have little traits of narcissism. That does not make you a narcissist. And somebody who exhibits a narcissistic personality is not necessarily someone with that diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. That's what I've read, I've learned from my research. Because that narcissistic personality disorder is a very big diagnosis that only a psychologist can diagnose you with it. But when you come to realize that you've noticed over time that someone continues to exhibit the same traits for years and years, they care about what outsiders say more than they care about what you say. They care about impressing and charming outsiders that they know nothing about, that they just met. They care about doing that than caring about what their loved ones, what their wives, what their children feel. They go out, have fun with their contemporaries, with their friends, and if anything goes wrong that day, they bring that anger to you. They do not show any of that anger or that vexation to the people who have exposed them or who have expressed that behavior to them. They bring that behavior to you, who did not go out with them or enjoy the outing with them. You are the one that becomes the punching bag. Because you're an easy prey, you're an easy target. You're there all the time. What are you going to do? You're not going to leave every single day, pack up your bags and leave every day and a half. Because you're already also busy with your own life, busy with your own activities, busy taking care of the children, busy taking care of the housework, busy taking care of the cooking. You know, we live abroad. We don't live in Nigeria where you have nannies, cooks, and all of that. If you're, I guess, well-to-do. You can afford, it's hard to have them here. I mean, I had a nanny at some point when my kids were younger, but it wasn't for like how it is back home where you just have nannies for years and years and years, because it's not cheap. Living nannies, they call them here, living nannies, who would live with you, clean your house, cook for you. I had them when my kids were younger because it was cheaper for me to have them for like 2 or 3 children as opposed to putting my children in daycare when they were quite young. So you would have someone helping with the housework and the cooking while I went to school to get my degree, and come back home and come to a clean house and come to children that have been washed, they've been their pajamas, they're in their pajamas. It just makes life easier. But I paid for that. I paid for it, and I made sure that my children never lacked. My spouse at that time obviously did his part of paying the mortgage while I took care of everything else. At some point, he took care of some of the bills until I got on my foot to be able to take over many years after I had graduated and I could work and get more steady job, which was obviously his role as a father because I did everything else. But they throw that to you and make you feel like ought to be grateful for that. Discounting everything else you do as a wife, as a companion, as a friend. You have no right to complain when they go out and come home late and come at 3 o'clock. They feel they do not have any, you don't have any right to ask them where they've been, and they don't owe you any explanation. They're not going to explain to you where they've been. And obviously when they tell you where they've been, are you even going to believe it? Because most times they lie. Many times I pick up my phone to call when I see it's 1, 2, where are you? And what do I get? Backlash, anger, irritability. Why are you calling me? Other men are here. Do you hear the wives calling them? Why is it only me? At one point I heard, if it's because of this marriage and you think every minute I go out you'll be calling me about, okay, I'm done with the marriage. Let it not be. because other men are having. I said, because I called to check on you, to see where you are at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And it's not the first time this week. After a while, you learn to back off and back away and just say, you know what, let him just do what he wants to do. That's what makes him happy. If it ended there would be no problem, because everybody, it's called live and let live. I myself, I busied myself with school, busy myself with my hobbies, one of which is going to the gym, going to school, learning more, getting more certifications, and just generally taking care of my family, spending time with my brothers and my sisters who are also here in this part of the world. Those are the little things that I find bring me joy. I don't need to go out to a nightclub to dance with strangers to be happy. I don't need to go to strip clubs to see naked flesh to be happy. I don't need to stay out late with friends that care nothing about me to be happy. I don't need to lie and make things up that never happened to amplify myself and make myself look good to be happy. But you see, there are many people out there that get joy from deceiving people, from lying to them, from attacking them, from manipulating them, that spend hours, days on end, plotting, like physically plotting against those they are supposed to love, planning how they can get one over them, how they can treat them one more way that would make them feel less of a person, that would make them feel less worthy. God has put all of us, each and every one of us, upon this earth to fulfill a purpose. God has given us the wisdom and the will and the direction. If we call him especially, God has given us the power to decide how we want our lives to go. With his help and his direction, he brings it to pass. But the narcissist believes that you as a person have been put here by God for them to torment you. Decide your faith. Decide how your life will go. And anything other than what they have decided becomes a negative result for them, because that's not what they want for you. They want for you what they want for you. You, on the other hand, can't decide for yourself. Many times my ex-narc would tell me, Nigeria, let's go to Nigeria. I packed up my certification as an RN and went to Nigeria to live for 5 years. I thought that would be enough to show my dedication to my family, to show my love and my desire to keep the family as one unit. I left everything behind. Many of my friends asked me if I knew what I was doing. Well, do you know why are you going there? What are you gonna do when you go there? What job are you gonna do? Why are you living this nursing? Do you know how much you're losing? I put all that aside and said, I want my family to work out. I want my children to be where their father is, regardless of the fact that he met me in Canada. I wanted my marriage to work. And I was ready to bend over backwards and sacrifice. Because he would say, well, I don't have a job here. My business is in Africa. My business is in Nigeria. So if you guys don't come, then in a year, I'm not going to come back. So you guys have to wait a year to see me. That was like, I would think to myself, my kids are pretty young. I'm doing it all by myself already. At that point, my children were not even, my oldest was 11 or 12 at that time. And I remember one night I went to visit my sister, who lived about 45 minutes away from where I lived. We would go and spend Easter with her. We would spend holidays with her. Like, when I say holidays, I mean the few days of the holiday, like Easter Friday or Saturday and Sunday, and come back that Sunday night, because I was always by myself with the children while this person was in Africa doing what God knows what, claiming that he was building homes, building for our future. Something he turned around later and said, go build your own. I remember coming back from my sister's house, because we loved going there and just watching movies together. I didn't feel as lonely because she had children too, and my children were pretty close to their cousins, and it was just a fun time. Even though deep within me I felt like an emptiness, that someone who was supposed to be my partner was never around when it was time. This was what made family a unit. When it was time to have fun, to be together, and during the holidays, it was somewhere else. But I tried my best not to make it an issue. I thought I was doing the right thing, not to complain so much. So I just learn to live with it. When I got home that night, after driving home, got home at about 11 o'clock. I remember then it was my third son who was in a car seat still. And I parked the car and brought the car seat. I was trying to get one of my sons, it was my oldest son, to bring the car seat out to help me with the youngest one, while I got the sleeping the second boy. He was sleeping, so I was going to carry him physically into the house. And I thought about it anyway, and I said, okay, you know what, you wake him up, let him walk, because it's easier for me to carry the car seat in with the handle while you wake him up to walk. And I think at some point the older one got frustrated that the second boy wasn't waking up, he wasn't waking up the way he wanted him to wake up, and he just got frustrated and tapped him, and eventually he woke up. But before he woke up completely, he pulled him out of the car, being a young kid, not knowing right from wrong, right? And I wasn't really aware because I was busy trying to pack up all the things I had on the car seat in the front. He pulled him out of the car, and this boy fell when he brought him out of the car and hit his head on the driveway, his forehead. And the whole neighborhood was agog with his cry, his loud cry. I dropped everything. I'd already come out of the car by then. I was trying to carry some things into the house. And I just did a U-turn and dropped everything on the floor and ran to my kid and saw him on the floor screaming, the whole neighborhood. And I carried him in my arms, took him in my hand, took him inside, only to see that he had a big hematoma on his forehead, like a big one here. It was already swelling. I just burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, how long can I do this all by myself? Like, what's going on? What happened? He said he wasn't waking up. I said, you should have let him stay. If you knew you couldn't help, why did you drag him out sleeping? He fell forward like that, half asleep, on his forehead. I cried as I rushed this boy. I got a warm compress, pressed it to his head. I was just crying the whole time. I said to myself, how long can I do this as a single mother? I feel like a single mother. What is this? I told my son, I yelled at him a little bit. I said, you should have told me. You should have brought him out. If you knew you couldn't handle him, you should have left him there. He said, I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know he was going to fall for it. I said, okay, just go upstairs. Just go upstairs, take a shower and go to bed. Let me deal with this. I took my son to my room. I gave him a wash. I pressed his forehead with a warm compress. And I just sat on my bed and just had a good cry. And I said, oh, God, how long can I do this, God? And I said, you know what? If my ex-narc, who I was still married to at that time, mentions going to Nigeria again, I'm just going to jump at it, because at least in Nigeria, I'm going to have nannies to help. I can't do this alone. I can't be here living like a single parent anymore. I don't care what I have to do, but I can't continue like this. So the next time he mentioned going to Nigeria, I thought about this. I prayed about it first. I said, God, give me a sign. And there was a day I was listening to a motivational speaker, I can't remember the name now, on the radio as I drove, and he said something to the effect of, if something is happening in your life and you refuse to bend, or you refuse to work along with whatever is happening in your life, and you resist so hard, you become like a twig in the wind that snaps into two because it's so dry and resistant to the change. You need to be more like a willow, like bendable to any situation in your life. So if something happens in your life that you find difficult, but you're willing to be, I guess, you're willing to at least consider the change, or consider to bend a little bit towards whatever is happening, regardless of how resistant you are or how much you don't want that thing to happen. You're willing to consider it, and you're pliable, and you're bendable, and you're willing to consider, then you become like that willow who bends with the wind wherever the wind goes. So if you bend, the wind blows, you go wherever that wind goes, then you'll survive that situation you're going through. But if you're like a twig and you're resistant and you say, no, I don't care, whatever, that is what actually, hearing that was what I thought, okay, that's God telling me I shouldn't be so resistant about going to Nigeria to live. So the next time he brought it up, I said, I'm willing to try. Let's sell the house. We sold the house. obviously, because of how bad that relationship was at that time, and the abuse had suffered so much. I mean, it was here and there. It was like something I don't want to bring into the picture yet, but as time goes on, as I become more comfortable, I might mention more. But I'd experienced a lot already when it comes to these narcissistic traits that I've mentioned. Some of them bordered on physical and verbal and emotional abuse. So I wasn't trusting enough to go to Nigeria like that. I said, once we sell the house, we pay the lawyers, everybody gets their portion, then I would want to get my if I'm leaving my future behind, if I'm leaving my nursing behind, if I'm leaving everything behind, what's in it for me? So it was agreed that I would get my own part of the money as like a security blanket to put in my account. Like if anything happened and I wasn't happy or I didn't feel safe, I would just pack up and go. But you won't believe that after he happily agreed to this agreement, he turned around and threw it in my face many times and accused me of being an unsupportive wife, a greedy wife, someone that wasn't working towards helping him build his businesses, someone that wasn't sacrificing. That was after we had already built all the things we had on ground. I went to Nigeria and I received the punishment for even so many times I would receive different types of attacks. But I just looked at it and said, you're in Nigeria now. And he's gotten you where he wants you, so don't even say anything. And my family, I would talk to them once in a while and they tell me the same thing. In Nigeria, they're not gonna, if something happens and you call someone, at the end of the day, the woman is blamed. Keep your marriage. That's what they would tell you as a wife. Fight for your marriage. Work hard. Don't let it break down. Don't let people know what you're suffering. Suffer in silence. That's what a good wife does. Don't go about telling people what you're going through. And obviously, that's what I chose to do that. I said, yeah. I stopped telling people. I just didn't say anything. I just learned to either chuck it out with him or we argued, we said whatever we want to say. But it was hard because in the heat of it all, I felt a lot of heaviness because I thought I'd made the wrong choice in going there to live. But many times I had fun because I met friends, I made new connections. I joined a group called CannonBallDiva, which was empowering women. That was my forte, so I loved it. So I did have happy times, but many times when it came to the relationship dynamic of me and my partner, it was a terrible one of disrespect, constant put downs, constant jeering, constant extramarital relationships, having 3 phones, having 2 phones, speaking in whispers, underhanded behavior, openly angry outbursts. The narcissist knows what they're doing. They know that when they make you afraid to talk or to speak up by their constant ramblings, accusations, however it being false, seeing things that do not exist and accusing you of things that you've never done. After a while, you shy into a corner and try to avoid confrontations like these. They know you hate confrontations. They know you hate arguing. They know you hate the children to hear your voices at night when arguing. But they make sure they do that if you would dare to bring up any bad attribute or any bad thing that they did. So therefore, they would shout you down and raise their voice and scream to the top of the mountains so that the next time you thought about complaining, you would think twice before bringing it up to them. They do not like you highlighting their faults. They know their faults. They know that they have this fault. They just don't want you saying it. They want you to live with it, accept it, agree to it, and just pretend it's not happening. And the worst thing you could do is come out and complain to other people, because then your punishment will be doubled. This is my way of expressing myself and getting a lot of these memories out of my chest. But you know what? I've talked enough today, so I'll stop here. Those of you who want to make your comments, please feel free. If you're going through anything like this, it might help to say it, speak it out, and shed light, bring light into darkness. Thank you so much for tuning into CannonBallDiva Chronicles. Take care and God bless.